Please just stop us anytime and ask any questions. We have a PowerPoint presentation we're going to use. We may not be able to see your hand. If you raise it, just go ahead and interrupt when you have a question. So I'm not sure were we expecting anybody else to come, Halima?
There were some who said that they would attend, but since we're going to be recording, I think it's okay. I'll send them the email.
Okay. Well, then just to give us maximum time to answer any questions that you might have, we'll just get started then. So the objective of today's session, oops, there's Samantha. Great. Hi, Samantha.
Hi.
Is she still there?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, I couldn't see you. Great to see you, Samantha.
You too. Thanks for doing this.
We were just getting started, and I think maybe you remember your colleagues from last time around. We were just getting started. We're recording this as well, so you can watch it a second time if you need to, but please break in with any questions at any time. So today we're focusing on giving you a better understanding or refresher on what elements need to be in place for a successful adult ESOL program or class, and how to evaluate and how to read the applications. So first we're going to talk about, give some background on what MCAEL expects of a grant partner, and to talk about the standards that we use to help them improve their programs and to measure their programs. We're going to go over each of the forms and also talk about the guiding questions for this year. And we're going to talk about, just what goes into the funding allocations at the end. And just a little bit about additional data analysis we're going to provide later on. So to get us started, I think Halima is going to speak a little bit about our expectations.
Yes. So for each of the applications, all of the programs, both the access and the programs, are on different levels in terms also their managements, the size of their programs. But one expectation that we do have of all the programs is that they continuously improve, and especially, so especially with all of the programs, since they're returning applicants, except for one, Bender JCC, we are looking for that areas of improvements that they have. The other one is also the grant requirements. I'm sorry, I think my slide is timed, so it's just moving. So the grant requirements is attending. We have a set number of program provider meetings and also workshops and network meetings. So there's an expectation that all of them are aware this is for the returning applicants, that they attend a set number of meetings. And this is information that we'll share with you all. In addition to the attendance for the meetings, there's also the mid-year and final year report, the narrative and the data. Of course, this will apply for returning applicants, and this is information that we will provide, I believe, at the last meeting, June 4th meeting. And for that, we're looking at progress towards continuous program improvement goals, the data that are there for the number of learners, instructional hours, and for program grants, the attendance and persistent, which is on the outcome summary, and learner progress indicators. Next slide.
Okay, I'll talk a little bit about the standards for adult education ESOL programs. So these are the standards MCAEL uses to define the quality components of an adult ESOL program. These standards are used for review of an existing program as well as a guide in setting up a new program. So there are 9 standards in total. I'll just talk a little bit about each one. Program structure, administration, and planning, pretty self-explanatory. How is the program set up in terms of staff, instructors, and support? Curriculum and instructional materials, what curriculums are they using, whether it's a series, a textbook series, or some kind of digital instructional material. Are they pulling things from the internet? Instruction, how many hours of instruction are they providing the learners? Is it available for different levels, beginning, intermediate, advanced? Learner recruitment, intake, and orientation. How are they recruiting their learners? How are they getting them to the class? And once they've done that, what is their intake process? A lot of our programs had to move to an online intake process. So take a look at how that's being done. How are the learners being orientated to the program in terms of what their expectations are for participation? Learner retention and transition. So once they're in the program, what are they doing to keep them there? And when they've completed, how are they being referred to other programs and moving on to other programs, possibly in the network or within their organization? Assessment and learner gains. Are the learners being assessed? Are we able to see, are they making any learning gains? Are they being tested at the beginning, at the end? How are they knowing whether or not they're ready to move to the next level? Employment conditions and staffing, looking at what's available for the staff and the instructors in terms of looking at their hours that they're working, whether they have leave time, whether they're able to get substitute instructors. Professional development and staff evaluation, what kind of training is being provided? Are they promoting trainings offering by MCAEL? Are they promoting outside types of professional development? And how are the staff being evaluated? Is there a process in place to evaluate the performance of the instructors? And then number 9, support services. What additional support services, if they're able to provide to their learners, whether it's food security, housing information, health information, are they able to provide additional services for their learners? Okay, next slide.
Thanks, Christine.
Mhm.
So are there any questions thus far? No? Okay, so we'll move then on to our applications. Have all of you had a chance to look at them, to refresh your memory on how they look? Okay, just a brief, you can move to the next slide, Halima, thank you. Just a brief reminder of the difference between the two types of grants. So program grants are the larger programs. They're managed enrollment, meaning that a learner has to enroll at a certain time, register at a certain time. They're expected to attend each class meeting. And for program grant programs, they have to, one learner has to be able to attend, or sorry, to be able to take 120 hours of instruction. These programs usually have an established staff and program infrastructure, and for the program grant applications or awards, it can include some indirect costs, and we'll get back to that later. Access grants, there's no upward limit, there's no maximum for program grants. Access grants, however, there's a maximum of $20,000, and that was just increased last year from 15. So the objective of access programs is to increase access for more people to English learning opportunities. So these classes could be more informal. Many of them are drop-in classes. Some of them are drop-in conversation-only classes. And they're of a diverse size. We have programs within our access category that are quite large, like as you'll remember, maybe Seneca Creek or Briggs Center. They have multiple levels of classes. And then the smaller ones may only have 3 classes in a year, like a single class. For both grants, they can ask for professional development hours for instructors. In other words, instructors can be paid for time that they spend in professional development, like in MCAEL workshops. As we talked about at the orientation, MCAEL really works toward decreasing the barriers to learners. And so we provide support, or MCAEL funding can be used to provide childcare and transportation support to learners. Okay, next slide, please. So the big difference for this year is that last year or this current year we've been in a pandemic and all classes have been online. And that has affected programs in different ways. For some, their enrollments have gone up because people have found it easier to attend class. But for others, their populations just don't find it as easy to be in online classes because maybe they don't have the device they need to learn on or the reliable internet access. And so this year, when we look at performance and we think about the coming year too, there are a lot of uncertainties still. So we can't really, I don't know if you remember, in past years, we've looked at, the number of learners, the number of classes, things like that. But this year it's a little bit different. So we're looking more at these questions. So is there a clear indication that they've learned from this last year and they're incorporating those lessons into FY22 plans? And how thoughtful are they when they're planning to be in person, hybrid, or online? So we told grant applicants that they should assume that in-person classes are possible. So the interesting thing about this last year when everybody was online is that some programs have found that it's really an advantage to have at least some online classes. So it'll be very interesting to hear what approach each one organization will take on this. Has the applicant shown evidence of flexibility in meeting the needs of their particular learners? So obviously it's the programs that know their learners the best, or they should. And so they should be able to speak to how their particular configuration of classes or whatever meets the needs of their particular learner communities. Because of this year's budget situation, back in February when we issued the grant guidelines, I'm repeating a little bit from our orientation, but a couple of you weren't there. So back in February, the county budget looked really uncertain. It was unclear whether there would be any recovery funding from the federal government. It looked like revenues wouldn't be very high. So given that fact, we basically said in our grant guidelines that applicants should be prepared for perhaps that they would probably be getting flat funding, the same amount as they did in FY21, or even perhaps a decrease. So you will see that their applications, while there are some increased amounts requested, I think people have kind of what's the word? Adjusted their expectations, I guess. Now, it turns out that the budget situation is actually a lot better than we thought it might be. And even though we don't know yet how much money that MCAEL is going to get finally, we do know that we might be putting a little bit into the grant funding. Even if MCAEL gets an increase, it may not go toward grants. So there are other approaches that MCAEL has been developing in terms of increasing access to learners. So, but that means that the big question really is why, if there's any reason a program shouldn't get the same amount as they did last year, and then, but are there specific innovations or something that would warrant an increase in funding? And then, of course, the question we always ask, is there clear community benefit? Any questions about those criteria? Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so just to mention it here, those were the kind of overarching questions. In the interviews, for the interviews, we've changed the standard questions because we wanted to make it focus more on those things that that are more related to the criteria for this year. So all of the applicants are returning except for one, which is Bender JCC. And Bender JCC, they actually had a program for several years, but then took a break last year. And then they came in with a proposal again this year. So for returning applicants, how did online instruction go for your program? So, did your enrollment go up or down? And, you might ask them, the panel might ask them whether they could tell you about one challenge or one success. For Bender JCC, the interesting question would be, why are they thinking of starting up classes again? What lessons would you apply for the coming year? Elaborate on your plan for classes. How are you going to implement them? Why did you come to that decision of in-person, hybrid, or online? And then the question we always ask, how would partial MCAEL funding affect your program? So some of these questions are straight from the narrative in the just a moment. Some of these are straight from the narrative, so you'll find answers there, but it's always interesting to ask people to elaborate on what they had in their applications. So as you'll remember, we have some standard interview questions, and then we have some questions that whatever the grant panel finds in this particular applications to ask. And just as a little bit of a guidance, you can ask about, to clarify any of the narrative responses. In some applications, there were discrepancies in their enrollment numbers or class numbers or other data points that we, MCAEL staff did a first pass, and we looked at all of the proposals. So if you look in the document, the summary of applications, there's a note section on there, and we've noted where the discrepancies are. So that's a starting point also for asking a particular applicant about something. And then, of course, about any of their budget items, their expenses, their revenues. So, okay, so now we're going to turn to the application itself. Christine, would you go ahead, and I'm going to need to excuse myself and help my daughter with something, but I'll be right back.
Sure. Okay, so the proposal narrative. So on here, the first section is the objectives and target population. So what we've done this year is for FY22, we said no new responses were required. So you'll see them, it'll just say same as FY21, okay? Project design and delivery, these are based on the standards that I discussed earlier: learner recruitment, instruction, curriculum and instructional materials, assessing learner gains, and support services. Outcomes benefit, how will the participants benefit from this project? How will they measure success for program accomplishments? So here we're looking for more details, specifically in the program grant applications. They're going to have more details to provide as opposed to the access grants. And then organizational capacity, looking at what resources, financial, organizational, and human have been committed, what will be enabled to propose projections to be successful, what other types of in-kind or volunteer services might be a part of this whole budget. Okay. All right. All right. So the data workbook, we're going to take a look at the outcome summary, the class summary, program budget, and revenues. All right. So let's go to the outcome summary. All right, so this is a sample program grant outcome summary. And this is, you can think of this as a snapshot of how the program is doing. So here you'll see we have actuals from FY21, and this is as of March 31st. So we asked them to submit up until March 31st. So there is still time for these numbers to change. And then their program targets for FY22. So the first question we asked them to answer is the number of adults learned. The number of adult learners enrolled by session. So for each session that they're planning, how many learners will be in class, right? So in other words, how many seats are being taken in a classroom? So for example, if you have a student who signed up for a class in the fall, right? That's part of the 142 students for fall of 2021. That same student, we'll call her Mary, may also register for a winter session. So Mary is also counted in that 250 for the winter session, all right? So that's where you may have, it says it can include duplicates because the learner may be in more than one session. Number two, number of unique individuals enrolled. So this is the number of unduplicated learners. So in this case, Mary would only be counted once. So that's the difference between 1 and 2. 1, a learner can be counted more than once, and number 2, we're just counting the individual unique learner. Number 3, number of classes to be offered by session. Again, how many classes are they planning to offer? Looking at FY21 on this sample, you'll see in the summer they planned for 13 sessions, and going forward to next year, it's going to be reduced to 4, right? But in other cases for fall, they had 23 classes, but they're planning to have 40. So this is just showing how many classes they're planning to have for each session. Number 4, for the program grant, you're looking at number of instructional hours. Remember, it has to total, the learner has to be able to take at least 120 hours in total by enrolling in more than one session. All right, so here, if they were to enroll for all 4 sessions, they would receive 240 hours of instruction. Other fields on this chart is the average attendance rate. Attendance rate, we're not looking at it as closely because, especially right now, there are a lot of factors impacting learners' attendance. So while we do want to take a look at it, it's not one of the most important pieces of data to base decisions on right here. Persistence, also looking at how long the students are staying in the class. How many out of, for example, 20 class sessions, how many are learners actually attending? Is it 10? Is it 15? Is it 4? All right, so that would be the persistence number. And then we look at the persistence rate. Okay, next slide. Or any questions? All right.
Hi, this is Marguerite. I got a question. When they showed that they had, just to take this as an example, okay?
Mhm.
They said that in summer of, 2020, they had 99 learners, right?
Mhm.
And then in the upcoming year, the year that they're asking for the money, they're showing 40. Do
Right.
we have any knowledge of what they presumed they were going to do against actuals for last year when they requested the money? For example, they may have said in summer of 2020 they were going to have, 100 learners or 200 learners or whatever.
Mhm.
Is there any knowledge that of what they surmised they were going to do versus actuals for the previous year?
I don't believe we have that information, but I don't believe we share it at this point, right, Rudy?
Because then
That's
that
correct.
gives us a feel.
Mhm.
You might consider this for next year if you didn't do it this year. It gives us a feel if they know how to guess for the
Mhm.
future. So if,
Right.
for instance, they say they're going to have 515 students in fall, right, of this coming year,
Right.
and they said in 2020 that in the fall they were going to have 515, but they only had 142.
Mhm.
It does give you a little bit. I understand about the pandemic, right? So
Right.
God knows how you can make any guesses for that. But it does give us an ability to see if they have accuracy in forecasting.
Forecasting, I see. Yeah, I
Well,
understand.
and we did in past years provide that information. I don't know if you remember last year we had a chart that showed a number of learners and classes from the last couple of years. We didn't show it at the summer or fall or session level, but more the total number over the year.
Yeah.
We did provide targets for the previous year as well as the actuals. So there is a way to seeing it.
See that if they're gonna go from,
We just, sorry.
I can see if they're saying they're going to go from 527 to 850, you can pretty much guess they're asking for more money. That would be
But-
my
but-
guess.
but
And
the
therefore,
problem
if
is
you
that-
can- therefore, if you
Sorry.
can see their forecasting ability, like if they forecasted X, Y, and Z in the previous 2 years, and it never added up to what their actuals were, then that gives us a pretty good feel for that this forecast is probably going to be off also. And therefore, maybe or maybe not, you know, depending on all the other factors, they deserve the money. I'm just looking for things to help make decisions.
I agree. The problem, as you point out, you know, with the pandemic, everything was off the table because
Yeah.
nobody could predict what, even if they said they were going to have 220 learners, you know, they may have had ended up with 90, or they may have ended up with 300. So there were so many things that were not in anybody's control. So we'd have to go back 3 years, actually, I think, to show that. So
Okay, I'm just for the future. I'm just saying it things like that give us
in
an
normal
ability
times,
to
yes.
judge the forecast, which is actually a guess, right? So
Mhm.
I'm just it gives us a better insight into the organization
Yes.
for the future.
I agree. And that's exactly why we had that analysis of numbers of learners over and classes over time. It's just all over the map now. So, yeah.
Mhm. And I think just looking at this, you know, if I were asking this program, well, you know, based on last year's performance, and you're expecting to serve, you know, over 200 more, almost 300 more learners this year, what are you doing to make that happen? Why do you think you're able to serve that many more learners with the same amount if you were to receive the same amount of funding? What have you implemented this year? And a lot of it
And
will be
also,
related-
sorry.
I'm just saying a lot of it will be related to being able to offer online instruction, which they weren't able to in the past. Go ahead.
It also could be conversely that people are trying to, for instance, if they have small rooms or whatever, and they're trying to they have to have online classes because that's what their learner population really responds to. Their numbers it may seem a lot smaller than what they had in FY21.
Mhm.
So it really I urge you to you know, kind of uncover what's behind those numbers, as Christine says,
Yeah,
because there is reason behind why, you know, it might look strange, but yeah. Any other questions on definitions or anything? Okay, we just wanted to show you an access grant as a reminder too that if you see blank space on an access grant form here, don't worry, because the last three, the average attendance rate, persistence, and persistence rate are all optional. Now, some of the access grants actually have started doing that, which we encourage them to do to keep track of that, but they're not required to. And you can see here the number of hours, the number 4, they're going to be often far fewer than you would have for program grants. If I might make a note also, when in our, I mentioned earlier that there is a summary of applications that notes any discrepancies that the staff noticed. So when we're talking about discrepancies, we're talking about differences between or inconsistencies between the number on this form and the number on the electronic form, which is the application data summary in the application. So just a reminder, there are 2 electronic forms we asked people to complete. One was the narrative, the other is the data summary. So we asked applicants to first complete this workbook that we're looking at now, and then take the most important data points and put them in the summary. But, you know, you'll notice that some of them don't quite match, so we might want to find out why.
Hi, this
Or
is
which is the
Marcia
right
again.
one.
On the screen right now, under number 4 in the 22 targets, it's got 0, but actually it should be like either 72 or 46. And because it's Excel and it's got words or letters in there, it won't add up. Are we just to assume that increase from 21 to 22 and we add it up ourselves?
You can, but it doesn't, it's not really that important. Let me just say it now that, the hours of instruction, it's interesting to see, but it's it's really that question is mainly for the program grants to make sure that they definitely have over 120 hours, or at least 120 hours.
Do you want to
Um,
see growth in number of hours in access grants or not?
I think that it's worth noting. I mean, they have more in this example, they have more classes. Oh, wait, so yeah, I guess it is an increase in the number of hours
It
too.
is.
That can be noted, yes, as a
Okay.
positive.
Yeah, because with Excel, if you stick one alphanumeric character in there, one
Right.
alpha, then it won't add up.
Right.
And some people, they're not the greatest Excel people in the world. So I just,
Mhm.
that one just happened to, poke itself out right there.
Mhm. Okay, so next slide, please.
So this is an example of a class summary, just to review the information that's shown on this page. So on the left, it starts with the session, summer session, first, fall, winter, spring. And sometimes you'll see a program has like session 1, session 2, like fall session 1, fall session 2. So sometimes they divide it up. Location, it'll show if this is where you're going to see, is it going to be online? Is it an online course, or will they be able to offer it in person, or if they're planning to offer it in person? So here you'll see a combination of both. Class name, they can name the class whatever they want. Usually it's related to the level of the students in the class. The NRS level, NRS is the National Reporting System level. So when learners are assessed, there's different levels that they can be categorized in. So again, what NRS level is that class addressing? So sometimes, as I said, the class name will match it. Sometimes they'll name it something else. Time offered, example, how many days a week or how many evenings, and then the time, start and end time should be noted. Number of seats offered, so number of seats available in the class for students, or how large they'll have the class. For example, if it's online, they might cap it at 15. How many hours per week, and then how many weeks per session. Any questions? All right, next slide, please. So this is an example of a program grant budget. It is similar to the Access program budget, but there's more details here. All right, so you want to look at the different categories for the program. In particular, you want to make sure there's a good cost basis explanation. Anyone should be able to go in and calculate the cost basis and come up with the number of what they're being requested. This is important too. So if they don't receive the amount of funding requested, recommendations can be made as to how can they adjust their cost basis to use the funds they've been allocated. So here we've got our different categories: direct program costs, for example, staff. Then we have hourly contractors for usually the instructors. It might also include childcare workers, any stipends they might be giving the instructors for prep time or PD. Next slide, please. You'll also see here categories for classroom rent. Again, if they're planning to go back in person. Instructional materials. Again, they should be able to show for how many learners what exactly they'll need and how much it costs per learner. Any supplies that might be needed. Equipment, technology. So we saw a lot of requests for Zoom licenses last year, for example. So that would be under equipment technology, or if they're perhaps purchasing any equipment. Next page.
You notice exactly in this example, they put the rent in the wrong place, actually.
Yeah, I saw that for a couple of them. All right, so additional categories. Again, here, pretty self-explanatory. Again, looking at the cost basis and the percentage that they're requesting from MCAEL. and to see if some of these costs make sense based on the current situation and if they are planning to offer online instruction. Next. Here are general operating costs. You'll see this for the program grants. Again, they can request operating costs. For example, do they have the rent here? They have rent here as well. Utilities, any communications here. Again, what is the percentage requested by MCAEL? So just checking over the budget, seeing if there's anything that is missing and that there is enough explanation for the requested funds.
Just to note that we asked them to use their letter of agreement budget. That's what LOA stands for, FY 2021 LOA, letter of agreement budget. Almost everybody had to change their budget over this last year because of everybody having to do online classes. So the letter of agreement budget reflects the budget that they had, where they included things as if they were going to have in-person classes. So it included rent and childcare.
Hi, this is Marguerite. I
Mhm.
can't remember from last year what your stand was on like line number 23 on that Excel right there for non-program staff. Were they, because they're asking 100% coverage for all of these people that are non-teachers, okay? Was that okay with you guys?
Yes, it's not 100% of their time. It's 100% of the 0.02, you know.
Right, what they got up there for the FTE, yeah.
Right. It's okay as long as we have these kinds of specifics. In the past, we have not really, I think in the directions, actually, it says, do not put a flat indirect cost rate. Because we can't tell what that stands for, you know,
Right.
what is inside that. So as long as they provide detail like that, it's okay
Okay.
for program grants. Any other questions? Okay. Next slide, please. So access grants are basically, you know, it's the same budget. This example shows, because we were having trouble even last year with grant applicants providing enough cost basis detail, we gave example line for each section. And hopefully that will have helped in making sure that we have the cost basis that we need. So, but of course, access grant budgets are going to be a little simpler. There are fewer staff. Usually the program coordinator is a, you know, staff person, but the instructors are all hourly contractors. This particular budget has childcare workers as well. And then, so for access grants, they cannot claim any indirect costs. I think the next slide actually is just an example of in-kind costs. So for this particular application, they have volunteer instructors as well as staff, which they've quantified there. So in-kind, and so other programs will also have classroom space as well. So all of that should figure into the total program cost. Okay, any other questions on budgets? Okay. And then just finishing up here with just a refresher on what goes into the recommendations for final funding allocations. Obviously, the scoring of the application is an important first step. So if the application is taken into is scored, right, and then we use that initial ranking in our June 4th meeting. We're asking that all of the applications be scored by June 1st this year. And then when we get to well, we'll have the interviews, which are happening next week. And as you'll remember, on the final day, on June 4th, we will talk about those interviews, and each interview team will give their impressions of that particular grant application. And then grant panel members have a chance to decrease or increase their scores if they would like, after hearing what the interview team has to say. Then when we get to, in that discussion also on June 4th, we also talk about funding priorities, performance in the previous year, and that's where staff usually has input. I believe last year we just said something if there was any problem, but in fact last year there was not any issue at all with anybody. We also want to think about other available sources of funding for individual grants, and is the population being served by any other organization? Again, this year, if you remember last year, the discussion really was about flat funding. And this year it will be very similar to that. So that we're not particularly expecting to give a lot of increased funding, but again, until we know exactly what the figure will be in relation to what our grant funding was last year, we won't know exactly how much can be how much of an increase there may be available. So, and then finally, last slide, please. We're going to provide some of the data analysis we did last year, including the funding history of the last three years, as well as the cost analysis, which is basically a spreadsheet that shows the cost per learner of these different programs. So the feedback we got from all of you last year was pretty positive on that, except that maybe we went a little bit overboard providing too much analysis. But anyway, so we think that this is the most relevant for this year's discussions. So that's all that we had prepared to talk about. Maybe we can just open it up to see if there are any questions or thoughts or from any of you.
Would you consider taking us through the actual app one more time and actually go into it and show us the various sections again?
Yes, I anticipated that, so I can do that for anybody who wants to stay. If all of you want to stay for that, that's fine. But if you, okay. Okay, so let me share my screen now. Maybe I can make sure that this is in the correct place. So so I've got, can you all see that?
No.
Not yet.
Sorry, the last step. There we go. Can you see that now?
Yes.
Okay. So the good news was, as we talked about the orientation, there's only one portal this year for both reading and scoring applications. So once you log on, this is what you see, a listing of each of the applications. So in my particular test portal, I've just got 3 ones. You all will have more than that. So do you have specific questions, or shall I just go through this?
I think
and
just
show
go
you?
through it. I know that thanks to Halima last year, I couldn't find some of the drop downs. I
Okay.
wasn't as able to get through like the extra data that was out there, and I wasn't exactly sure where it was.
Okay. So the trick is most everything is inside a proposal. So say we go into one, this is the one I want to, I'll do this one since it isn't reviewed yet. Okay. I click review. And this by default brings me to the grant application narrative form. And if you want to find, as you read down, there's all the answers, the responses to the questions. And I'm just going to scroll right down to the bottom because attached to this narrative form are the three financial documents, or sorry, three attachments that are related to organizational finances as well as board of directors. So supporting organizational documents. So you'll see that, you know, it says there is this file upload here, but you can't get to it this way. This is much you might have been talking about, Marguerite.
That was one of, I
So-
would click on those and they weren't hot, so.
Yeah. So what you need to do, whatever form you're in, the attachments will show up here. So once you click on, you know, if you want to see their organizational statement of financial activities, you click there and it'll bring it up. And then you can go to the other ones as you need to. Okay, and then if you want to, you can print them out. I don't think that you can download these, but yeah. Okay, so that's how you get to the, oh, you can download. Here's the download button, and there's a print button here as well. And these other functions are view functions, I think. Okay, so that will work with whatever form you're looking at. So this is, as I said, when you come to this page, so if you want to back up, the best thing to do is just click back on this breadcrumb, which I just found out that that's what this is called, a breadcrumb list. So if you click on application, it'll take you back to the form. So the other important form, as I mentioned, is the grant data summary, application data summary. So this is a select form list up here, has 4 forms. So if we go to the application data summary, that'll bring that up. So these are all those data points we ask people just to put the most important ones in here. Number of learners, persistence rate, budget information, amount requested from MCAEL, etc. And this is partly to give you all the most salient information, but also on our part, we can easily slice and dice this information this way because this system acts as a database as well. Again, we have a file upload here, which is the workbook that we were just looking at on our slides. So to get to that, all you need to do is form attachments up here, again, in the left corner. If you click on that, it'll bring it up for you. And in the view section, it just puts it all together as it's as if like you were reading a PDF. And the instructions this year were in the beginning. The first two tabs were instructions. So you kind of have to scroll through that to get to the first workbook sheet that they filled in. Again, you can download, which may be easiest in terms of reading, or print. So those are the 2 forms that the applicants had to fill out. In addition, accessible here in each application is the organizational profile. So here's the profile for CASA. So this is all their basic information, and we asked them to put their 501c3 status IRS letter attached to this. So again, that's going to show up in the form attachments if you click on that. But one important thing I also wanted to mention was that for this year, applicants did not need to answer some questions. We were trying to streamline the process and make it simpler for them. So we just said, especially in that first section that asks about mission and objectives, we just said, well, if it's the same as last year, just put the same as FY21. So a number of them did that. If they had a change for FY22, they could put it there in the response to in the narrative. So for all of you to refer to FY21 responses, this is the place you go to find them. So it's right in this organization profile form. So Halima has set this up as an upload. So for better or for worse, each organization only has one organization profile. So this is a good example to look at because CASA has 4 different applications. So if you are reading the Life Skills ESOL application and you get to that question about, oh, what is your mission objectives? If you don't remember or you just want to review it, you can go back to here through the form attachments and look at, unfortunately, it doesn't say here what it is, but it corresponds in order. So if you go for the first one, this is a PDF about with the FY21 responses to those questions or to that question. Okay, so there was something else that just jogged my memory about something, but it'll come back to me, I guess. Oh, just to mention those questions in that first section for missions and objectives, everybody's just getting an automatic set of points. I know I can't remember off the top of my head, maybe Halima remembers 20 points or something for just that first section. So for all program and access grants, basically not much changes in your mission and objective, and they've already been through this process of vetting, so we thought it was fair that all of them just get a flat 20 points. So if you are short on time or you think it's fine not to go back over that information, that's up to you. But that is where it is in the organization profiles if you want to look at it. Okay. The final form that's going to be available here, which there's nothing in there yet because we haven't had our interviews, is we're going to post our interview notes so that they will be available to find here after the interviews. Okay, so then we go back to the application. Actually, from any form showing here, when you're ready to score it, all you do is click the score button, and that'll bring up the scoring sheet right next to it. And if you might remember, for those of you who were here last year, if you click, I mean, the first thing you have to do is make sure that you click the right one, Programmer Access. And it's easy to see right here, what grant are you applying for? Program. So once you click Program, it'll bring up the appropriate scoring sheet. And just, I can show you here, this first section, organizational mission and program objectives. Yes, it's worth 20 points, but again, I've explained it here. All applications will automatically receive the maximum score, but you do have to, there's only one score you can pick, and you pick 5. And then that'll total up that section as 20. Okay, so we were hoping to streamline the process both for the applicants as well as the panelists. So there are fewer questions to actually score this year. I think that covers it. Any questions on how to maneuver on the portal?
This is Marguerite again. You had said something in a previous slide that there was a section in this application for analysis that was done by MCAEL.
No, it's a separate, those are separate. It's going to be a separate spreadsheet that we'll send you later.
Okay,
next
it's
week.
not within here.
No,
Okay.
it will be, sorry, we will make it accessible through the portal, but it's not there now.
Okay, fine.
We'll tell you how you can get to it.
Yeah, because that was really helpful. The things that y'all provided.
Great, that's good to hear. Okay. Anything else? Does this all ring a bell? Good.
Yes.
Nothing is much changed, but I think it will be much more convenient to have just one portal. We just decided this year, if you have questions, as you're reading through them and you have a question about an application that you're not interviewing for, you can send those questions just directly to us or to Halima, and we'll pull those together before the interviews. I guess, Halima, we have to remember to mention that to people. Yeah. That's essentially what the other portal was meant to do, but okay. Anything else? Great. Well, thanks very much to all of you again. I know it's quite a time commitment, but we hope it'll be a good process again this year.